What is the latest you're hearing about the status of the Pac-12 in sports?
Well, along the lines of what you just heard Chip Kelly say, I spoke with somebody yesterday high up in the Pac-12, and they said, look, it's way too early to be presumptuous and start assuming that we're not going to see football in the Pac-12. And I think what continues to be important here is they still feel they have time on their side. Yeah, there's been no decision made in the Pac-12, but there has yet to be decision in the Big Ten, the SEC, the Big 12, all these other ACC, these other Power 5 conferences, and beyond that as well. And so what the Pac-12 is looking at is maybe a more challenging road, and I think what really is important here is there are those opening games or early games out of conference that a lot of people have circled as maybe difficult to pull off, and that may be where you see some adjustments. I'm talking about USC, Alabama. I'm talking about Oregon, Ohio State. These games that we all love to see, especially in the college football playoff era, but those may be more difficult to pull off. If that's the case and we see a more regional model for college football and in their various conferences, at the end of the day, the Pac-12 is part of a group that is just trying to figure out how they can best and most safely play football in the fall or maybe beyond that.
Now, they seem, however, to be at this point the most in jeopardy. I hate to even use that word in this context, but as far as football is concerned. Bobby, you tweeted the other day you think the Pac-12 is done for the year. What do you think now?
Well, Greeny, I'm a big believer in trends, and I understand Chip Kelly's coming out and obviously trying to speak and promote his conference, but when you have the Cal State University Systems, which is the largest university system in the state of California and also in the entire country, with almost 500,000 students, when they come out and say, hey, we're not going to have class in person this fall, I believe that's a huge trend, and you're going to see that 4 of the teams in the Pac-12 reside in California. Now, only 2 of them are public universities, but universities like to group together. They like to stick together, and no one wants to be the outlier, especially in a state like California where everything appears to be on hold for maybe a lot longer than much of the country. And so as I look at this, I just don't understand how they would be able to make this decision today for the largest university system in the state of California and then have some of their other huge universities somehow pull out and not be in lockstep with this decision.
Paul Finebaum, what do you think?
I hate to use a cliche this early in the morning, but this is really a political football, Greeny, because of the politics of the West Coast are really different than they are in the Deep South, the Midwest, and some other parts of the country. So you have politics playing a role out there with the mayor of Los Angeles saying the stay-at-home order is in effect for a couple more months. You have the chancellor of the California state system saying no dice. They're really in a very awkward position. Southern Cal can't get up and start practicing if you can't leave. So I think Bobby is correct. I think the Pac-12's only hope of being part of the college football situation this fall is if the rest of college football starts late and gives them a chance to catch up.
All right, so that then brings us to the next piece of this. And Laura, you brought this up briefly the other day, but let's dive into it here. If we get to a point where there is a real concern that the Pac-12 will not be able to play this year, what then does the transfer portal mean to some of these kids? Could we see something like a mass exodus of players going east?
Well, look, this is all very early in this process, but what I can tell you is that this is being discussed. It's something that coaches, that conference commissioners, that the NCAA even has been involved in talking about what this may look like. And here's the thing. At the end of the day, we're looking at some players that if their conference or if their school is not able to play because of restrictions in their state or other various reasons, then they may not want to be penalized by that. And they may be guys that are looking for opportunity because at the end of the day, the NFL is, of course, the attractive next level that they're trying to get to. So here's how it looks right now as far as immediate eligibility when it comes to the transfer portal. You can see on your screen here the different options, but what I think is really important and why this matters is you've got to be immediately eligible for this to even factor in. You're looking at the only way that this happens, and you see it on the bottom line, is that there is a release from the school that you currently are at. So you're going to have to see, as it stands right now, some of these schools say, oh yeah, no, I'm good with you going on ahead and transferring somewhere else right now and being immediately eligible to play. I think that there could be a possibility if things really come to a head and we don't see football in some of these conferences or some of these schools, then maybe their school says, you know what, I'm going to give seniors an opportunity to go somewhere else and at least have the chance to play. But It could get very complicated. And one coach told me, you mentioned that phrase, mass exodus. He said, how would the NCAA regulate a mass exodus from certain schools or maybe even a conference itself? Could get very complicated, but either way, fascinating to consider.
Well, listen, it could also be extremely impactful. Paul, what would that mean? I understand that maybe we're a little bit ahead of it here, but if we were to see something like that happen, what would that mean in the big picture for college football as we know it?
I think it's free agency, Greeny, and I think it's probably already going on. If you're sitting down there at Clemson or Alabama or Florida or Georgia or Michigan, and you're thinking, I've got a shot at picking off some of the better players in the country, you are going to do it. And it's not like the Pac-12 was healthy anyway. I mean, this program is already a mess. It barely shows up on the radar screen. Last year, Oregon and Utah had a shot, and they both lost late in the season. I think they've only been to the college football playoff twice. So this is a conference that really can't afford to miss this season, but right now, based on what everyone's saying, they're in big danger, and players exiting is the worst possible thing.
Bobby, as a former player yourself and one who had pro expectations and aspirations and that obviously were fulfilled, if you were a kid out there at one of those schools out in the West right now, what would you be thinking and what would you be wanting to do?
If I was a draft eligible player going into my junior or senior year, I would absolutely be looking to transfer and trying to find the most advantageous situation. One of the issues is, like, a lot of these schools, in the rest of the country, how many scholarship opportunities do they have available? Because most of them have signed their whole class. They may have a couple of spots here and there, but I think the NCAA is going to fight this tooth and nail, because if they don't, you will essentially have the Pac-12 looking like the Thanksgiving turkey at 5:30 or 6 o'clock at night. Those bones will be picked clean. There won't be any good players left, because everybody who has any type of professional aspirations are going to try to get out of there, and they're going to fight as hard as they can if they don't think they're going to have an opportunity to show their skills for the NFL this fall.
Thank you for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.